this bill could actually be called the Increased User Pays for Students bill. Because in reality what this bill will do, if we take all of the ideological argument out of it, which I'll get into in a moment, what in reality it will do is significantly increase costs to a number of students. Because at the moment there are a lot of services provided by a students' association using a relatively modest fee taken from all students that are provided to, therefore universally available to all students. And under this bill they will not have the ability to do that. Students will have to pay individually for a lot of the services currently provided by students' associations. And the other thing is, in some cases the university may well choose to pick up and provide those services. If the Students' Association is no longer able to do that, the university may well decide that they are going to provide some of those services. They will not be able to do so at the cost that the current Students' Associations can do, because the Students' Associations have a huge amount of voluntary labour involved with them, and therefore they're able to provide services a lot cheaper than a university is going to do, which is one of the reasons why we should call this the Education Increasing in User Pays for Students bill. Because, and actually I know this for a fact, because back in 1999 when we had a referendum on whether membership for the Students' Association at Victoria University should be voluntary or compulsory, overwhelmingly students voted to retain the compulsory membership element of it, but the university did have a contingency plan in place should students have voted for voluntary membership. And it basically involved charging students an additional levy that would replace the Students' Association levy, so they'd be no better off financially. In fact, they would pay more, because the university knew that they could not deliver the same services that the Students' Association delivered at that cost. They would end up having to pay significantly more, and therefore they were going to pass that cost on to students, and students were going to pay more. And actually I think there was some pretty compelling evidence provided to the Select Committee, I understand, that argued just that in fact this will not decrease costs to students, it's going to increase costs to students, and PricewaterhouseCoopers, I believe, gave the Select Committee evidence to suggest that that was going to be the case, which is one of the reasons why this could be called the Education Increasing User Pays for Students Amendment Bill. It could also be called the Abolition of Campus Culture Amendment Bill, because students' associations deliver a huge amount in terms of the culture of campuses, not just at universities but also at polytechnics. And in fact, at some of the smaller polytechnics, they actually have a really critical role in delivering cultural activities, cultural services to students, and contributing to the vibrancy of tertiary education in this country. So I think it's going to be a real shame to see some of those things go by the wayside if this bill is passed. But there are other titles that have been suggested around the removal of choice for students that is inherent in this bill, because students won't get to choose whether they want to keep the system compulsory or voluntary, as they did in 1999 under, I think, a very good compromise worked out by Tau Henare and Deborah Morrison and other colleagues in the then New Zealand First Party. They're not going to get that choice this time around. I actually am disappointed by that, because I think it would be good to see them given that choice, and I actually would support a referendum. And I think that the referendum, and we do have an amendment in that frame, but the referendum in 1999 did force the students' associations to really sharpen up their act. And yes, I do think some of them really do need to sharpen up their act. I think my old association at Victoria University, some of the things that have gone on there in the last few years are totally unjustifiable. And I think actually the accountability back to students that would be required by a referendum that gave students the choice whether they continue with compulsory membership or voluntary membership would actually go some way to addressing that. We sharpened up our act an awful lot when we knew that students were going to be voting on whether or not they were going to keep us or get rid of us. And I think that some of the students' associations around the country could use that same discipline at the moment. And unfortunately, they are having that choice, that opportunity removed from them, which is one of the reasons why this could be called the Education Removal of Choice Amendment Bill. There are some other sort of slightly more cynical titles that I could come up with. It could be called the Be Nice to Heather Roy Bill, because up until she lost her job as a minister, the National Party were going to vote against this, and then Heather Roy lost her job as a minister, and they decided they'd vote in favour of it. Nothing wrong with being nice to Heather Roy. I happen to think Heather Roy's quite a nice person, but I do think it's ironic that the National Party suddenly decided they were going to support this bill to be nice to Heather, to make Heather feel warm and fuzzy.
Moana Mackie.